body electric, passage 6. Now we're going to get to these I sees, and then we're going to get to some I hears as well. I sees 5 times. I see religious dances, old and new. I hear the sound of the Hebrew lyre. By the way, you'll remember that Hebrew gets used 6 times only in Leaves of Grass, so it's significant he uses it here. I see the crusaders marching, bearing the cross on high, to the martial clang of cymbals, obviously drum taps. I hear dervishes monotonously chanting, interspersed with frenetic shouts as they spin round, turning always towards Mecca. You'll remember Mecca is used in Salut Amon 11. I see the rapt religious dances of the Persians and the Arabs. Again, at Elysia's home of Circes, I see the modern Greeks dancing. I hear them clapping their hands as they bend their bodies. I hear the metrical shuffling of their feet. Just go back to 4 quartets. I think this poem very much influenced T.S. Eliot and to East Coker, lifting their heavy feet in clumsy shoot, earth feet, lone feet lifted in country mirth, music, blah, 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 blah. We've given full lectures on it at learnstrong.net. I see again the wild old Corinthian dance. Corinthians, Norton's will tell us, were reveling attendants of the Phrygian goddess, Sibyl, whom the Greeks adopted from the ancients and associated with Aphrodite and Dionysius in rites celebrating the wild delights of nature. As I said, I think that there's very much a Dionysian element in this poem, and I think Whitman is doing it intentionally. I see the Roman youth to the shrill sound of flageolets, throwing and catching their weapons, flageolets, the wind instruments, as they fall on their knees and rise again. I hear from the Mussulman mosque the muezzin calling. You'll remember in Salut Amon 3, the muezzin is mentioned. I see the worshippers within, nor form, nor sermon, argument, nor word, but silent, strange, devout, raised, glowing heads, ecstatic faces. Can we just point out that in a collection of poems from a certain time period, when you're not supposed to do it, Whitman will celebrate Islamic worship. What an amazing accomplishment for him to have done this. I hear the Egyptian harp, notice how he moves, of many strings, the primitive chants of the Nile boat, the sacred imperial hymns of China. Now all of a sudden we're in China, from Egypt to China, to the delicate sounds of the king. By the way, our Nortons here will tell us that this reference to the king is ancient Chinese musical instrument of resonant stones hung in a wooden frame and struck with a hammer. This stricken wood and stone, or to Hindu flutes, and by the fretting twang of the veena. The veena is the Hindu musical instrument of the Sither family. A band of bayadirs, and bayadirs here are Indian dancing girls. From here now, we move on. By the way, the word twang gets used 1 time in all Leaves of Grass, and it's right here. I find that fascinating. On music, twang. Now to passage 5, to finish this section. Now, Asia, Africa leave me, Europe seizing inflates me. By the way, seizing, grabbing, holding, hugging, and inflates is used 1 time in all Leaves of Grass, and it's right here. I find it a fascinating word picture because it's like a balloon that now almost goes up into the air to take a look at history. And of course, think about where we are now as we are moving from Asia and Africa to Europe, and now we're going to begin to celebrate Europe. To organs huge and bands, I hear us from vast concourses of voices, and then he goes to Luther. Luther's strong hymn, Anaya Festa versus God. That is to say, our Nortons will tell us the sorrowing mother was standing. Rossini's Stabat Mater Dolorosa, that is to say, Whitman, our sidebar will tell us here that this one is literally the sorrowing mother was standing, or floating in some high cathedral dim with gorgeous colored windows, the Passion in Agnus Dei, or Gloria in Excelsis, the title hymns, obviously Lamb of God and Glory in the Highest. He continues then to say composers, and we're going to get 4 exclamation points here. Mighty maestros, and you sweet singers of old lands. By the way, old gets used 6 times in this poem. I think that's important. Soprani, tenori, bassi. To you a new bard, caroling in the west. And this idea of a new bard is used only 1 time in Leaves of Grass, and it's right here. Caroling in the west, well, think about the idea that here he's going to put himself in the poem, speaking to all these great poets, in the same way that Dante will play the game in Limbo, as we talked about it when we did our Dante's Inferno. Hey, is that great poet, that great Italian? Remember they asked? He's playing a very similar game. Obeisant, that is to say himself, over related to respect, right? By the way, it's only use of the word obeisant in Leaves of Grass. Sends his love. And then in parenthetics, such led to thee, O soul. All senses show and objects lead to thee. In other words, evolution. All the music that came before came to provide us with this. That is to say, his song, Leaves of Grass. And now it seems to me, sound leads or all the rest. Now he comes back. I hear the annual singing of the children in St. Paul's Cathedral. And this is something that's always majestic to hear, the children's voices in St. Paul's. Or under the high roof of some colossal hall, the symphonies, oratorios of Beethoven, Handel, Haydn, obviously three of the greats. The creation and billows of Godhead laves me. This creation is a famous oratorio by Haydn. Norton's will remind us. Laves gets used one time in Leaves of Grass, and it's right here. Give me to hold all sounds. I madly struggling cry. I think this is the call here. This is the invocation to the muse. Help me to be able to hold all sounds. The inclusivity of Whitman is, I think, important. I madly struggling cry. You'll remember the word madly out of The Cradle Endlessly Rocking. Oh, madly the sea. Fill me with all the voices of the universe. Again, this is the invocation of the muse. Endow me with their throbbings, and then nature's also. The tempests, waters, winds, operas and chants, marches and dances, those seven. Of course, by the way, I think it's intentional that he uses the word tempest as he's been talking about stages. That is to say, Shakespeare's classic and maybe his last play of 1611. As we move now out of this poem into Passage to India and then towards the final few poems of Leaves of Grass remaining, we're going to get this sense that Whitman is starting to understand in the deathbed edition that it's time for him to complete his Leaves of Grass. So he'll start playing games that I think are like what Shakespeare is doing at the conclusion of Tempest, as we've said in our lecture on it at Learnstrom. Utter, pour in, for I would take them all. The Norton's reference here is in Whitman's graphic description of various consummations of religious experience. There is an advance from the frenzied ecstasy of ancient rites to the billows of Godhead, the high spirituality of the greatest composers. Now we will turn to passage 6, the kind of penultimate line. Before we do that, though, just to remind, throbbings is used at Lilacs 14. You'll maybe go back to study that. From now, we come to then. Then I woke softly. So now we have our awakening happening. And pausing, by the way, we've got 9 of these ands. And pausing, questioning a while, the music of my dream. This will take us to sleepers. I who wonder all night in my vision is the opening lines there. And questioning all those reminiscences, the tempest in its fury, back again to the idea of storm, and all the songs of sopranos and tenors, and all those rapt oriental dances of religious fervor, and the sweet varied instruments. You remember this, I Hear America Singing, sweet varied is used as a construction there. And the diapason of organs. We saw that word earlier in this poem. And all the artless plants of love and grief and death, the harmony of both sides, love, joy, as well as grief. I said to my silent, curious soul. Think about the fact that curious gets used almost 50 times. It's 49 times, technically, in Leaves of Grass. It's such a powerful word, because I think that's who Whitman is. I said to my silent, curious soul out of the bed of the slumber chamber, come, I told you, first word of Leaves of Grass. Come, for I have found the clue. You'll remember this word clue from Cradle. Oh, give me the clue. It lurks in the night here somewhere. I have found the clue I sought so long. Now it goes from I to us. Let us go forth. Obviously, we're thinking now about Song of the Open Road, huh? Refresh amid the day, cheerfully tallying life. You'll remember his use of tallying already in Leaves of Grass. And Lilac 16, the tallying, Song of My Soul. The great Harold Bloom obviously making a whole lot of this word tallying. I'll let you run that to ground yourself. We've commented elsewhere on it. Walking the world, the real, nourished henceforth by our celestial dream. And I said, moreover, happily, what thou hast heard, O soul, was not the sound of winds, nor, they'll get 12 of these nors, nor dream of raging storm, nor seahawks flapping wings, nor harsh scream, nor vocalism of sun-bright Italy, nor German organ majestic, nor vast concourse of voices, nor layers of harmonies, nor strophes of husbands and wives, nor sound of marching soldiers, nor flutes, nor harps, nor the bugle calls of camps. We think of drum taps, obviously. But to a new rhythmus fitted for thee. This is interesting, the word new being used here. Poems bridging the way from life to death, vaguely wafted in night air, uncaught, unwritten. And then, of course, the famous last line, let us go forth in the bold day and write. Let's finish now with this new rhythmus idea, fitted for thee, for a soul, for America. Poems bridging. The only other use of bridging is in the poem that will follow, Passage to India 3. Okay? And I think in some ways we're getting ready. It is the bridge. The poems bridging the way from life to death is used one time in All Leaves of Grass, and it's right here. Vaguely will take us to march in ranks hard pressed. You'll remember this? Vaguely, I see. Vaguely wafted. 14 times wafted gets used in Leaves of Grass. In night air, uncaught, unwritten. There's a lot of Shelley, I think, going on here as well. Which, let us go forth in the bold day. You'll remember this from Song of Myself 46, I will you to be a bold swimmer. He loves this idea of bold, courageous, and right. Now, of course, Poets Yet to Come is where we have to go for the way we finish this. Because in some ways, this poem takes us back to the very beginning. Do you remember this poem at the very beginning in Inscriptions? Poets to come, orators, singers, musicians to come. Not today is to justify me and answer what I am for, but you, a new breed, native, athletic, continental, greater than before known. Arouse, for you must justify me. I myself but write one or two indicative lines for the future. I but advance a moment only to wheel and hurry back in the darkness. I am a man who, sauntering along without fully stopping, turns a casual look upon you and then averts his face, leaving it to you to prove and defend it, expecting the main things from you. But to a new rhythmus fitting for thee. The last lines again one more time. Poems bridging the way from life to death, vaguely wafted in night air, uncaught, unwritten, let us go forth in the bold day and write. What an amazing poem to invite us, come, right? To not just read, but to write. At 2a, I think the argument here of this poem is that the greatest artists move from art to art. They appreciate so much what has been done and obviously want to create in the new way. The great writers obviously integrate all of the perspectives that are possible, musically and otherwise. At 2b, I love the invocation of the muse. I love how he draws on Homer, how he draws on Virgil as well. At 3a, well, I just want to, there's so many poems I could throw out, but just go back and take a look at what we said about Coleridge's Kubla Khan, that 1797 poem. I think there's a lot going on here in this poem that is borrowed from that beautiful poem of Xanadu. And Paradise, as you'll remember the last word of that poem. It's available at Learn Strong, our comments there. Finally, at 3b, what is, just to own a poem like this, what is your most favorite or most powerful dream? Or what inspires you to write boldly? And as we move out of this poem onto Passage to India, the great poem of the universal poet, the Son of God, let's maybe challenge ourselves to not just read these poems, but to begin to write some poems as well. Thank you.